let me start with a confession. I would say for most of my life, I was fairly judgmental towards a certain group of people. If I were honest, I would say I would just never have taken part in what they were taking part in. Like I thought it was unacceptable, thought it was kind of disgusting. I am talking, of course, about people who put pineapple on their pizza. You know who you are. What are we doing? We're gonna start putting pepperoni on our ice cream? Is that what we're gonna do? We're gonna squirt some ketchup on breakfast cereal. We're gonna start dipping our Oreos in ranch dressing. Is that how we're living now? Like it feels to me like culinary blasphemy, like an unholy union between pepperoni or between pizza and pineapple. And so for a long time, I guess I was pretty judgy about that. I would challenge people who would partake. I would secretly judge these misguided souls. I would think to myself, remind me never to ask that person for advice about anything ever. Like, I'm gonna ask you for parenting advice, you put pineapple on your pizza. But then, my dear friends, one fateful night, at a friend's house, I grabbed what I thought was an innocent slice of ham pizza. And something strange happened. My taste buds were assaulted. Or should I say serenaded? With an unexpected symphony of flavors, the savory ham harmonized perfectly with the sweet tropical notes of the pineapple, the acidic tang of the fruit cut through the richness of the cheese. It was a beautiful collision of flavors, a paradoxical pairing that somehow worked in perfect culinary harmony, Beethoven conducting a symphony in my mouth. I finally saw the light, and it was a golden piece of pineapple on a bed of mozzarella. How could I have been so wrong? How could I have been so judgmental and so arrogant? I'd never even tried it, and here I was, discovering something beautiful, served up a piece of humble pie, but it's never tasted better. I tried to keep my new discovery to myself. I didn't want to share with other people that I had been wrong. I had already become well known as an anti-pineapple apologist, a crusader against tropical toppings. And so at first I kept it to myself. Pineapple became a forbidden fruit for me, where I partook of this in secret. But then I decided it's time. It's time to just go public with it. And so in 2007 at a Super Bowl party, I remember like it was yesterday, the Colts were playing the Bears. There were quite a few pizzas spread out on an island, and right there in the middle was my Hawaiian temptress calling out to me. And I took a piece and I ate it in front of everybody and immediately felt freedom and felt community. Now we had agreements, we could be one, united. There's a sense in which we think that the only way we can really be together on something is if we all see it the same way. If we all have the same tastes, the same opinions, the same preferences, the same politics, the same interpretations. Like, in order for us to have community, we've all got to see things the same way. And that idea is perpetuated in our culture because we are bombarded these days with hot takes and viral threads and trending topics, and the question that we're confronted with like all the time, I don't think it used to be this way, but it certainly is now. We're constantly being asked, what do you think? What's your opinion on this? What tribe are you in? Where do you stand on this issue? I mean, throughout the day, we are constantly exposed to that question in one way or another. And it could be about global politics or the latest celebrity scandal or whether a hot dog's a sandwich. Like, it could be on anything, but there's lots of opinions, lots of different perspectives. And this pressure to pick sides has caused lots of division. We see it within the church, we see it in God's house, but we see it in our own houses. Lots of division between family and friends and communities. We just get focused on what we think. on our tastes and our preferences. And so last week we began a series called The Separation of Church and Hate. We're going through Romans chapter 14, and Paul addresses our tendency to allow disagreement to turn into division and to disunity. And it's because we get so focused on an issue, something we don't necessarily agree on, that we lose sight of what's really important. We get so obsessed with being right that we forget about relationship. And so he challenges us in Romans 14 to not miss the big picture, that we need to be united. And unity doesn't happen because we agree. Unity happens because we accept. There's something within us that thinks that, if you'll just agree with me, then we can have unity. That's the problem. Like, you don't agree with me. If you agreed with me, then we would have unity. And so we'll debate and we'll argue and we'll fight and we'll have conflict. And for some of you, maybe this is the case in your home, like you and your spouse are always fighting and arguing over the same thing, and you think the way you're gonna have peace and unity in your house is if one of you will just agree with the other. But the secret to unity is not agreement. Romans 14 would say it's acceptance. Accept one another as Christ has accepted you. And that word acceptance is this arms wide open acceptance for people that we don't necessarily agree with, specifically as Paul talks about in Romans when it comes to these areas of disputable matters. But acceptance is hard. I'm guessing it's hard for you for the same reason it's hard for me. It's hard for me because I know I'm right. I mean, if I didn't know I was right, then no problem. But I know I'm right. I know my opinion is right, and my perspective is right, and my interpretation is right, and my tastes are right, and my preferences are right. And you know that too. And when you know you're right, it's hard to accept people who disagree with you. James chapter 4, verse 1 asks a question. It says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Just take a second to answer this. In your life right now, where there's disagreement, what's causing that? What's the source of that? Now, a lot of us would say it's an issue, something that we just can't agree on, but a lot of us would say it's a person. We would say, well, if he would be more reasonable, if she'd stop being so critical, if they would just be a little bit more objective, if she'd listen to me, if he'd stop dismissing me. And so we point to a person and says, it's not so much what causes fights and quarrels, it's who, and it's him or it's her. We point maybe to a person, but verse 1 goes on to say, don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You want something and you don't get it. Isn't that where it comes from? You want something and you're not getting it. You want it your way and it's not happening your way. You want them to feel the way you think they should feel. That's not how they feel. You want the decision to go the direction you think it should go, and that's not the direction the decision's going, and that's causing these fights and quarrels. It's that you don't get what you want. We want our way. And when we don't get that, it causes this disagreement. And Romans 14 is going to challenge us when it comes to disputable matters that, look, there's something that matters more than being right, and that's the relationship. And so Romans 14 talks to us about how do we be thoughtful of others when we disagree. When you're sure someone is wrong, when you disagree about a decision, when there's an issue that has just separated you from someone else, how can we be thoughtful in a way that protects the relationship and keeps unity? Romans chapter 14, verse 13, therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead of passing judgment, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister. Don't let your strong opinions or your perspective or the way you talk about your strong opinions and perspective become an obstacle that gets in the way of other people's spiritual growth, that gets in the way of their relationship with God and their relationship with others. So just as a reminder, if you weren't here last week, here was the areas of disagreement for this early church in Rome. Some of the believers felt like it was wrong to eat meat bought from the market because most of the meat in the market had already been sacrificed to idols. And they're like, no, we don't want to have anything to do with that. We're going to be vegetarians. Other believers were like, hey, the idols aren't even real. It's fine to eat the meat. This is not a deal. Some of the believers said we can only worship on Saturday. We have to worship on the Sabbath. Other believers are like, no, that's the way it used to be, but that's not the way it is now. There's not one day that's more sacred than the other. And so they had these issues that were beginning to create division within the church, different people on different sides of the issue. And Paul is saying to these believers, and he's saying to us, look, don't disagree in such a way that it's gonna be a stumbling block for other people's spiritual growth. Don't let the issue become more important than the mission. And the phrase he uses here is make up your mind, right here, make up your mind. When we disagree, we tend to react emotionally. I think that's true for all of us, right? Like if you disagree with me, sometimes the adrenaline kicks in. I didn't even feel that strongly about it until you disagreed with me, but oh yeah, now I feel super strongly about it, and we react emotionally. This phrase, make up your mind, is saying don't react emotionally. Instead, make a deliberate decision. Predetermine in your mind, here's how I'm gonna handle these kinds of disputable matters and these areas of disagreement. But that's tough for us because when there's a disagreement, we get passionate and defensive and sensitive. So let me just give you some thoughtful questions to stop and ask yourself to determine if it's emotional reaction or if you're making up your mind. You're being thoughtful. So first area, it would be defensiveness. And here's the question: do I quickly try to justify myself and counterattack instead of listening honestly? When there's disagreements, am I just in my mind going straight to my rebuttal and I'm gonna make my case and here's why I'm right and you're wrong? If that's what's happening in my mind, that is an emotional response. Here's a second area is sensitivity. Am I interpreting disagreement over ideas and opinions as attacks against me? Where somebody can't disagree with me without me taking it personally. You disagree with me and suddenly that means you don't like me. So when I feel like your disagreement is a personal attack, it tells me that I'm reacting emotionally. Here's the third area would be rumination. Am I replaying the disagreement in my mind? Like the person's not even around, but we're going at it, like we're arguing about this. I'm driving in the car by myself, nobody's in the car, but out loud, I am saying what I wanna say, right? Like in the shower, I'm rehearsing, like you can't handle the truth. I'm rehearsing my case and making my points and just ruminating on the issue and on the fact that somebody's disagreeing with me. Area number 4 is all or nothing thinking. Am I looking at the disagreement in extreme terms rather than keeping perspective and understanding nuance? It's this idea of saying, well, if we can't agree on this, then I guess we got nowhere to go. If we can't agree on this, then I guess I can't stay at this church. I guess I can't be in this small group. If we can't agree on this, I guess I can't come home for Thanksgiving. And some of you're in a marriage where this is the case, like there's this area where you do not agree. And that has become your disagreement has become the foundation of your relationship. And you think if we don't agree on this, that means we can't move forward. We must not be right for each other because we can't agree on this issue. It's all or nothing thinking. Number 5 is personalizing. Am I assuming negative intentions behind the other person's perspective? I'm assuming that their position or their ideas or their interpretation or their political views, it's coming from this negative place. We talked about this last week, the fundamental attribution error. When I look at my opinions and my beliefs and my perspective, I know my intentions. I know I'm well-intended. I know my circumstances in life, and I am looking at my perspective through that lens. But when somebody who disagrees with me expresses that, I don't give them that same benefit. The final area would be, I'll just call it pineappling. Am I stubbornly holding on to an opinion and refusing to be open to new ideas? It's pineapple on the pizza, right? Like I don't know why I feel this strongly, but I feel strongly. I've never really explored this for myself, but it's what my parents taught me. It's what my grandparents practiced. It's what the church I grew up in believed. And so I'm holding on to this. I'll fight for it, even though I don't really know why. I feel really strongly about it. And so Paul says, don't just react emotionally, but make up your mind. decide in advance that you're going to handle this in a way that's not a stumbling block or an obstacle that gets in the way of relationship. Here's how the Message paraphrases verse 13. Forget about deciding what's right for each other. These disputable matters, you don't have to decide what's right for other people. Here's what you need to be more concerned about, that you don't get in the way of someone else making life more difficult than it already is. And so the image here is a stumbling block or an obstacle. So picture yourself, going for a walk, and this walk is your spiritual growth path. And you're on this path, and suddenly there's an obstacle in front of you, and the only way you can keep moving on this path is to go over the obstacle, and it's tiring and it's frustrating and it takes time, but you finally get over it, and then when you get on the other side of it, what you couldn't see is there's another obstacle. And you get over that obstacle and there's another obstacle. And Paul's saying, look, don't let your opinions and your perspective, your interpretations over these disputable matters put all kinds of obstacles on the path of people who are following Jesus. Specifically, these Jewish believers who held on to all of these different rules and traditions. Like, you're making it hard for the Gentiles. They're coming into the church, they're seeking after Jesus, they're on this path, they're excited about it, and then you put this obstacle in front of them. And they have to go around it in order to keep moving forward. Don't put obstacles on the path of other people who are spiritually pursuing Jesus. So let me just give you 3 stumbling blocks to watch out for. Number 1, actions that tempt or confuse other people. Actions that tempt or confuse others. Romans 14 helps us understand that our actions and decisions may not be sinful for us, but they could potentially cause others to sin. So being thoughtful means that I'm not just considering what's my right, I'm considering what impact that will have on other people. And Paul makes it clear here, as we'll see, that even though he doesn't personally have a conviction about eating meat sacrificed to idols, like he's okay with that, he's not gonna do that if it causes other people to stumble and if it violates their conscience. He's not gonna do that. Now, an obvious example of this culturally would be social drinking, right? Like, the Bible clearly prohibits drunkenness. The Bible does not prohibit a glass of wine at a meal or having a beer at a ball game. Like, that's not prohibited. The Bible does prohibit you from judging people who see this issue or issues like this different than you. The Bible prohibits that. The Bible does prohibit you taking your personal convictions and then requiring everybody to follow them. But the Bible also prohibits you exercising your freedom in a way that might cause someone to stumble. Like, that's prohibited. And so you stop and you consider not what's my right, but what's best for the people around me. How does it affect them? When I was in California not long ago, I was eating at BJ's restaurant on a Saturday night with a friend that I hadn't seen in years. I'd preached earlier that evening at a church, and while I was having dinner with my friend, someone from the church who had heard the sermon bought a beer and sent it to the table as a way to say thank you. It's California. And so I'm sitting there with this guy that I hadn't seen in a long time. What the person who sent the beer to the table didn't know is that the guy I was having dinner with was about 2 weeks out of the Betty Ford Clinic. Hadn't been out very long at all. He didn't know that. And so I found myself in this position, right, where I want to be thoughtful. On one hand, you've got this guy who's given a gesture of thanks. On the other hand, I'm having dinner with a recovering alcoholic. And so I asked myself, what would Jesus do? Now, he would turn the wine into water, right? Like, he's not going to be a stumbling block. And so I asked the server if I could exchange it for a peanut butter pizookie. Like that, I also felt like Jesus would have done that. And so you have a situation where you stop to be thoughtful, and what's really important is not necessarily your freedom, but it's the other person's faith. It's not that you want to be legalistic, it's that you want to be thoughtful. And so we are willing to limit our freedom, not out of legalism, but out of love. Not out of rule following, but out of a relationship. Romans 14, verse 15, if your brother or sister is distressed because of what you eat, you're no longer acting in love. your right is secondary to your relationship with that person.